Welcome to the first 2021 session of the Innovation Cafe. We are probably one of the best informal communities of corporate innovation, where we can meet people like us, like me, like you. This project started last year precisely because of COVID-19. We couldn't afford to go out, have a chat in an informal context. So the whole idea of the Innovation Cafe is to be able to learn in a very informal way with people like us that are probably facing same problems. And if we brainstorm together and if we learn together, we become better tomorrow. So that's the whole idea. We've had 35 sessions before this. So if you guys go on YouTube / the Innovation Cafe, you will find previous sessions. We've had incredible speakers, a good lineup. And this year we are going to have also very good speakers. In one of them, I'm planning to run the session inside of his private airplane. So our guest, Michael from TerraCode, is trying to do that. So Michael, if you are watching us, please do that. It's going to be certainly unforgettable. By the way, he's the father of Command & Conquer Red Alert. You know the game? I've spent a lot of money, meaning my parents' money, playing that game using my phone line in a modem. Okay, so the session is open. So the question today is corporate innovation somehow changing, evolving, or is it broken? Because in March last year, COVID-19, many companies were trying to survive, pivoting business models, trying to come up with new products and services. So my question is, and I'm going to stop right there, is, are things changing? Do you guys see in your organization something different? Are you guys more empowered to innovate, or are we back to business as usual?
I would just launch a provocation. I would say desperation and poor results are fuel for innovation. The hardest companies to change are the ones that are making money. And now lots of them, especially small and medium businesses, are not. So it's either innovate or die. So that causes a sense of urgency that leads them to innovation. I would say so. It's actually a kick in the butt for digital transformation in general. Innovation is just for the ones that have a bigger vision of where they want to go, not just change what they did to something new, but completely revolutionize themselves. I would just say that to start the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but in your organization, I think that, how are things going?
Please, Eric.
I was about to say, no, I thought you were making an interesting point. I think from what I can observe from a distance, is that there's kind of nearly two camps, like the ones that haven't changed and continue business as usual, and either that they were innovating and they keep innovating, or they haven't started and they're not starting. And then there's those, like you said, that's innovate or die, kind of like they need to rethink their business model, they need to rethink their offering. We fall probably somewhere, I suppose there is that third category somewhere in the middle, where we are, the company having been built to operate remotely for the organization. It's not a change for us, but the workload that COVID-19 has created and the strain on people meant that there's a lot less space to try to bring innovation or kind of change, simply because people just don't have the headspace or the time to do it. And we're not in a situation where we need to innovate or die. We're just more in a situation where we need to ride the wave until things settle a bit more, and then we can start thinking about innovation. Not saying that we haven't done anything, but it's just getting people's headspace to define kind of new areas or new kind of innovation. And yeah, that's been a struggle from our side anyway.
I can imagine. Yeah, well, remote, I would say it's another big challenge for most companies. Well, tech companies were already used to working remote with distributed teams, but I would say for every other company, it's really tough. It's really tough because the connections break themselves, especially the human connections. It's really hard to maintain team spirit with stand-up meetings every morning. You know, lots of people are doing great work with that. and they have good habits, but it's going to be the challenge of the next few stages of overcoming the impact of COVID. I would say that's a big challenge. That and the reconversion of the office space. Some companies are saying, or there are two tendencies. Some people say that offices in general are going to reduce dramatically. Some others say no, they are going to just be reconverted. They are going to have more spaces for you to interchange ideas and to be with your colleagues, but less tables for you to sit and be there the full day. So it's going to be a conversion of space. But many companies are not going to be so open and are going to approach this change to and reduce their offices. What's your opinion, guys?
I like to react on that. In the company I work for, we are an engineering company, and we have a small so-called innovation team, and we try to break the road and make it ready for a more like an innovative mindset. We are engineers. We're supposed to be like the guys with the bright ideas, but in the organization construct, it's a project organization for more than 100 years, and there's really different kind of thinking. So do it in a very short sequence, just validate your idea tomorrow with the customer instead of working on a report for 2 months and then find out, oh, we are a little bit aside of what they actually meant. This kind of way of thinking is hard to change. But the example I want to give, we made a innovation space. We called it Space. You can make a reservation in Outlook. Like, I want to book this room, it's space, and it's completely designed with a lot of rooms, with a different view, with colors, everything to kind of start this innovative, creative mindset going. But it's gone. Everyone's working from home, and I can see that, for example, the reach we have with our innovation cafe, as I organize for the company, jumped from 20-30 people a night to 150 people. So I can reach a lot of more people. But I think the dangerous part is the cultural thing, to give people this kind of feeling like, think creative, don't think about your billable hours, don't think about your deadlines, really spend some time of the week to just be creative. I think this part is quite far gone, with everyone sitting on his attic all day, basically. So I'm wondering how you guys experience that as a threat also for innovation.
It's a good point. Habits are changing. Raymond, you were unmuting. You want to share something with us?
Yeah, I was
Benedict?
thinking what actually changed. We a few of our projects, let's call them innovation / business development, because it's not always very clear where's the border. Got traction over the last couple of weeks, and they really kicked off, and then and that helped a lot. And what I realized it depends more on the, let's call it, region. I don't want to say about nationality or something.
Okay.
Just look at the land on the map. Where are the people located that in my company, in our company, that are easy or like adapt very well to this remote working, and where you can really create a momentum in the team and all what you need. And other, let's call it, regions, they really struggle because they are just like, it's not their thing. Huh?
Okay.
It's
So
like,
where are you seeing that?
cultural.
I mean, you're being really sort of polite and saying regions. Okay, where? I mean, where is this cultural gap?
Let's say it's much easier the more to the north you come. The more you come to the UK or to Ireland, yes, or to the Nordics, yes, that's super easy. I mean, for them it's like daily business, and for them it's super easy. The more you come to the south, the more I just speak about our company. The more difficult it gets, especially in France. It is very, very hard for them because they do business different, and seems they struggle a little bit to transfer how they do business or even develop ideas. You know, having just a chat at a coffee machine, that's
True.
what they like. It's
Yeah.
not possible at the moment. So how?
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody is working a lot more, particularly concerned about getting the numbers, the business as usual, the core, so no space for creativity. Is that what you are trying to say?
Yeah, but yes, but for me, because I run the innovations, it helps because I get a lot of attention and a lot of I can, as long as I can relate what we do to turnover or to project a turnover, yes, it flies.
Okay.
So for me, it helps. And I'm very easy, and I like working here rather than in my office, which is totally desperate at the moment.
So you, as an innovation leader, let's say that the COVID-19 actually empowered you.
Yeah.
So you are now more visible.
Good
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah,
that's
interesting point.
I had been wondering if what remote working was doing was exaggerating cultural and motivational disparities. So if you've got a team where people are intrinsically highly motivated, they love getting up in the morning and they want to get stuff done, then actually not having to sit on a train for an hour, not having to be dragged into another pointless meeting where you have to nod through somebody's PowerPoint presentation, actually just being able to get on and do some work and talk to people you need to when you need to talk to them is awesome.
There
If
you go.
actually
Yeah.
you've got a bunch of poorly motivated, badly paid people who are just sitting at their desks hoping nobody notices they don't do any work, and their aim in the day is to get through it without getting fired, and if they think they're going to get fired, the only real option they have is to stab their co-workers in the back. That gets way worse when it's remote, because you can hide much more easily, and you can sort of go off in nasty little political cliques more easily. But I hadn't thought of Benedict's point about the culture. I'm thinking back 2 years ago when I worked in Paris. I'd been working in London, where lunch meant the period in time where you're typing with one hand because you've got a sandwich in your other hand, right? That's all lunch was. And then suddenly I'm in Paris and it's 2 hours in a bloody cafe. And you think, my God, this is a waste of time, until you realize that's actually the forum in which all of the office politics and disputes and uncertainties are, without ever being specified, resolved peacefully. How the hell do you do that if you're not meeting up? And I genuinely hadn't thought of that. So that's brilliant.
It's a brilliant point. Well said. And now that you make me think, well, I've been used to that thing of interrupting the day, midday, to have a formal lunch with your knees under a table for a while. When I lived in the US, as you've mentioned, for a couple of years, well, lunch was just a pretext to go downstairs, grab a sandwich and come right up. But you miss something, actually, it's different ways of achieving the same goal. In those cultures where you have a formal lunch, it's exactly as you've mentioned, Kevin. A lot of stuff is done. It's like in Italy, for example, a lot of stuff is done next to the coffee machine. Like when I worked there, it was like 12 coffees a day, because everybody, hey, passed by my room, let's go for a coffee. It's like, my God, I'm not going to sleep today again. So it's cultural, but things get done, but in different locations. But now with COVID, everybody's remote. You took that away from those people that were used to having lunches to close businesses and to sell stuff and to share knowledge and to recruit even. It's interesting to see how that evolves with time.
Yeah, one of the.
I think.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Eric, go.
Eric.
I guess I've just experienced that's one of the barriers. Technology sometimes, like with the delay, all the informal conversation or the debate or like that you get between people, all of a sudden that's operating on a very different level, because when like that there's a gap, all of a sudden everybody talks at the same time, everybody stops, and there's not a flow of conversation or of ideas, because you're constantly kind of trying to see where you fit in the conversation and trying to kind of get your point across, and also the delay kind of cause your point to arrive at the wrong time, and it's just really messy. And I find like you jump from call to call to call without having a, like, even in a real space on the way to the meeting, or as you set up in the meeting, there's that informal discussion that happens. Now, I must say, the organization I'm in, there's always that first 5 to 10 minutes where it's just kind of banter and a bit of a chat, but it's still not the same as kind of catching an idea and exploring it, because there's that kind of delayed technology and people join all of a sudden and they're not sure if they should, that you don't see them joining, and so people don't really butt in and talk all the time, or so there's a very different dynamic, I think, that has been kind of established.
Yeah, but you know, on the
problems with kids at home, so trying to work with babies jumping around, stressful. I guess we are only men here in the call. For women in particular, I mean, a few groups are in deep pain. So I'm not talking about innovation here, just getting the bread and butter done, the business as usual done, because schools are closed, kids are at home in a few countries, Portugal, for instance. So it's not easy. So we have here in the room one innovation leader who is now in the spotlight, more visible. Eric, things are not probably as creative as it should be, because you are back to meetings. Any other experience we have here, space for creativity or not? Are things improving or not? That's the key question we are trying to find answers today.
I mean, point is that people adapt to new situations, and I'm so impressed. Like, you know, nowadays I don't do Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, but I always keep a break in between, because people call me after the Zoom meeting. People call me on the mobile using another channel, calling on me on the mobile, and have a, you know, continue the conversation very private suddenly, and probably just testing ideas or something. So they adapt. That's, you know, that's like transferring the coffee machine conversation to telephone, mobile. Okay. So people are very creative, especially French people.
And is this, I'm curious, is this something that happened kind of naturally, or it's something that you kind of try to foster, saying, okay, well, you ring me after the meeting, or kind of, did you open that channel, or did that kind of evolve organically?
It evolved organically, because I realized the mobile was ringing while I was already on the next Zoom meeting. I said, shit. So I adapted my style of working, give just, you know, smaller chunks and breaks in between, for space for people to have another conversation to follow up.
I find it very interesting that somehow this whole distance calling get very impersonal. So I miss many dimensions, like look somebody in the eye, even smell them. Sometimes you don't want, sometimes, but it is a dimension. But at the same time, I see a lot of rooms in people's house from inside that I never would have seen before. And I speak with colleagues or customers, and then a little girl from one of my colleagues come crying like, brownie escaped, like the rabbit escaped and get loose on the street. And the whole hierarchy, how you say that, leveling, boss, senior, junior, this is completely gone on those calls. And that is something I find very interesting. I'm also very curious how it's going to be when we go back to the office in this kind of level play field in our organization, because you just see very personal stuff happening on the camera.
What about budget? Are your projects getting more budget? Are you being more empowered, or is just a matter of stick to the past, or no innovation budget at all? I've been through that, by the way. So COVID, let's stop it. Innovation activities, ventures, let's stop everything. Core business is the priority. How was your experience regarding resources to innovate?
Same. Innovation budget was cut to a third for the year. With more challenges in order to bring the digital transformation and the front stage. So we're more challenged, but with a third of the budget.
Ouch. That's challenging, yeah.
Yeah, it was during the summer. It was very hard, because I was like basically told to hold position and not to do anything. It's like, oof. And then I realized, I have to relate. I have to put my projects in a matrix of the core business, in the same reporting matrix. if it fits or not doesn't matter. You have to do it anyways. Otherwise, it's not moving and you don't get any attention. So I did this, quite painful, a lot of work and a lot of number crunching. And suddenly they realize, oops, if this is really coming true, Jesus, this is big turnover. Yes. And since then, skyrocketing. So it was the innovation budget is far bigger than last year. Yeah.
Benedict, you mentioned a really interesting factor. Whenever you always tie innovation to benefits of the company, to revenue, and that's a really an intelligent way to make boards approve initiatives and projects. You show them with evidence what the impact will be on their business.
I was forced to do. There was no other way. And
no other way.
Without COVID, I would have had much more freedom. I'd play around and try out things. But suddenly it became very rigid, very stiff. The whole thing was not really willing to try out new things. So that was the only way to move forward. Without COVID, I wouldn't have thought about this at all, because nothing.
Yeah, actually what happened to us was that now every innovation project that is not related to digital transformation, we're like looking twice before saying, okay, we're going to fund this. Now we're really focusing the budget on digital transformation related ideas. It's a pity somewhere, because you're inevitably losing disruptive ideas. But yeah.
So fall back to incremental innovation. So further rise in the innovation, disruptive is stopped. Only improvements in the existing business model, products and services, not trying to come up with something radically different.
Let's say outside of the digital transformations strategic box. Yeah.
Yeah, good. It doesn't make sense, but it's reality. You have to be more picky if you have less resources. Yeah. The criteria a bit probably changed. It's not COVID in specific. Any crisis or any company in crisis needs to be more specific. It's a question of financial strategy.
I'm curious about the culture. Is culture getting more informal because we are using Slack, Microsoft Teams?
Good question.
The office itself, sometimes the boardroom, the meeting room. What do you think?
I think it's getting much less informal. If I look at our company and how management behaves on the calls, it seems like everyone is, how can I say, is a bit more vulnerable, because all of a sudden, as a senior also, or as a CEO, you have to spread your message via technology from your house. It feels uncomfortable because, yeah, you're not used to this Teams or Zoom as well. While a junior is very comfortable. He do this like in a blink. So this is kind of, for me, very interesting to see how also the more the less techie people have to really adapt to that, and this shows a bit vulnerability, and that for me is, I think, is going to have an effect after COVID. I think so. Yeah.
A good perspective. Definitely, you can't use, at least through digital or through Zoom or web meetings, you can't use emotional intelligence so well. You don't have the proximity, the informality that you can have on the coffee shop next to your office. That in the past could break barriers that now are there. You can't break them. And people, as you've mentioned, you called it vulnerability, that provokes people to be more defensive, probably. It's a good point.
The way in which people establish connection might be very different through remote communication, but it's not necessarily less connected. I mean, we had something last year where we had somebody joined on contract, and she was with us for 4 months or 5 months, and she had a very old school, accustomed to face-to-face communication style, where she would try and create connections with people almost very deliberately by sort of standard conversation starters, and an amount of the meeting would be taken with sort of banter, as somebody said earlier.
Icebreakers. Yeah.
Because we've been working remotely for a while, we kind of got into a stage where connections are forged through repeated references, almost kind of micro connections over a long period of time. So people will just drop phrases in which establish connections with other people because they refer to previous conversations. So I wonder if it's not that you can't establish the connection, it's just that there is a requirement for a different form of communication, which potentially could be very culturally exclusive. Because how are you doing, how are your kids, anyone can answer. Whereas a weird reference to a Marvel movie, 50% of the world's population won't get. So, I don't know.
Yeah, good point. But you also won't get, what you also won't have is that the ability to check your colleague and see that he's concerned, for example, because you see it in his eyes, his mannerisms, you know, and acting at those moments is now impossible, is gone. You know, you cannot help people. You cannot see how, if they're facing any difficulties, if they're, for example, if now you ask a task, someone to deliver you a task, they deliver it poorly. It's like, how do you know if he was having a bad time? Can you have that human to human conversation? It's like, okay, I understand. Are you having any problem? Can I help you? So will that happen so closely through Zoom?
I would say, can I speak?
Of course, no.
What you just said, I relate somehow with what our French friend was saying. I don't remember his name. Sorry,
Nicola. Yeah.
Because that happens to me also after a meeting, after a call. I have another call in my phone. So and usually there's some some preoccupation of someone who likes to share with you or myself. I can give a call with someone that usually in the co-working space in the office you go and you speak to the, let's say, have a coffee and let's talk about this or let's talk about that, peer to peer. And now that happens a lot, and that happens in my reality, and I see it in this way in a phone call after a meeting or before a meeting or something like that. It happens more frequently than it happened before. Yes, but I just wanted to make another point. Is the less formality, I would say, is something good to the creative process and as a whole, because now we are we are pushed to be less formal on this situation. But there's also some adaptation, of course, different cultures, different adaptations. But with time, there will be more changes, of course. I don't know, and I think no one knows what they will be regarding the companies and all the employee contracts. If it's only in telework and work from home, or if it's only in the office, or if it's something more flexible. That, in my perspective, I would say would be the best, something more flexible for both company and both the employee. But regarding innovation and creativity, I would say there's positives because less formality is one positive side, and also the connectivity. I can connect with more people, more time. Okay, so that's a positive side. The negative side, it's the human contact, because well, we are human, and we are not used to. We are being used to that, to look at the screens, to our black screens every now and then. And with this situation, we are always with this behavior more time than before. Yeah, and that's a negative side, perhaps. I don't know. It's only my perspective. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's an excellent point, Nuno. You're on the side of the human management of the team, of the company, so HR, and you saying that okay, people would invite you for a coffee if they wanted to share something with you, or if they needed your help. But now they call you anyway. They call you and they ask for help anyway via phone. So it hasn't changed that much. Just the channel changed because people keep doing it. That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective.
In this, so this week, I think everybody knows this. Jeff Bezos just resigned from being the CEO at Amazon, and he's the new chairman. So thinking about Jeff Bezos and Amazon, my question is this COVID-19 burning platform helping companies to become like Amazon, or are we still far from that? Meaning Amazon is something where extreme innovation, it's always day one. Innovation is part of the culture. Was COVID-19 the punch in the face for the leaders in the boardroom and everybody throughout the company, in particular middle management, usually where the bottleneck is? Was COVID the punch in the face to become more Amazon-alike, meaning more innovative by default alike? Or are we still far from getting more trillion-dollar companies? By the way, he closed his last quarter with 100 billion in revenue.
Actually, it was the most profitable quarter in any company ever in the history of of time. So 111 billion. It was more than the sum of the two below him. It's like Google and Facebook. So that was quite impressive.
I was ordering things just for fun, right? I was like, I'm working 24/7. I need to order something just to feel happy. So I'm responsible for the
Yeah, he loves you
too. Sounds familiar.
Was this the punch in the face? Was this the moment?
I'm not sure we're on a path to create another Amazon with that same level of revenue. I think smaller organization have probably, like we said at the beginning, had probably the need to innovate or die. So I think we saw a lot of business model innovations at the lower end or at the smaller end of businesses, like restaurants, like breweries, kind of people that would deal normally in direct face-to-face kind of model, like the whole entertainment industry, and a lot are still struggling, but I think we've seen a lot of kind of small innovation that kind of kickstarting kind of a new way of doing business. And I think I feel like that the bigger player haven't really changed their ways, because I think, well, partially in the tech sector where there might have been a better use of kind of remote workers and kind of historically, so they understand how to do that probably more than the smaller organization who have completely changed the way of doing things.
Yeah, so bigger companies didn't change that much, because tech companies, because they were already on that path. Ollie, you were saying you wanted to share something?
I was just going to say, I think it might have been a punch in the face, but in a different way for a lot of companies that are not going to make the leap to the next phase. So particularly, you look at retail, and I'm UK biased in retail, but if you look at department stores like Debenhams, or you look at some of the high street retailers who, it was the kind of final punch in the face that's floored some of them, they hadn't made that leap to the online, to the digital model that some of the more digital native businesses like the Boohoo's or the ASOS's already had. And you've got this dynamic now where those companies are now buying up the old companies, but not for the staff, not for the physical presence, for whatever brand equity is left in them, and the platforms that they might have.
Yeah,
so I think it was probably a slightly different punch in the face.
But yet I've seen a lot of small, so there's kind of those there that kind of haven't adapted, and yet a lot of smaller, more local industries seem to have been able to develop kind of a new market and then expand as well. And I don't know if it's the same in the UK. I know in Ireland here, there's been kind of a push of kind of shopping more locally and kind of keeping things, I suppose there was the Brexit thing and all that, and people kind of maybe refocus on buying Irish brands, and so there's been kind of an explosion around that, supporting kind of a more local economy, and with those local businesses kind of trying to innovate and do more online, or kind of change their business model to be able to, like, industries that would not have been online before, or they wouldn't have had an online presence, all of a sudden, like, they're there and they're serving a market that they didn't even know existed then before.
Yeah, you're right. You're both right. Yeah, Ollie, retail was one of the biggest hits, and yes, small businesses, they did have to reinvent more fastly because their survival is at stake. But Hugo made a good point in big retailers, and I can imagine, for example, there's a big one here in Portugal, actually a Spanish one, El Corte Inglés, in which they have like 7 stories of shopping, and they surely must have had a miserable year. So e-commerce is the only solution. Take advantage of your brand and move forward. And in that sense, Ollie was right. That's the kick in the face they got. So really turn to e-commerce. Stop being dumb. Don't leave it all for Amazons. And most other small companies, although restaurants suffered a big hit, most of them adapted relatively well for takeaway, some better than others. But, well, the biggest margins they had was on alcohol that they sell in store. So they lost a lot there, you know. So they will probably benefit from the marvelous coming back that will happen after this crisis ends. People will be eager to travel. They will be eager to party. They will be eager to go out. So that's the wave that they will have to ride to forget this crisis. What's your take on this, guys?
If the virus goes away soon, because we have many new variants coming, so we don't know what is going to happen. I remember May last year, we were like, oh, in August, we are going to be back in the office. Then, okay, in December, we are in February.
True.
So yeah. So, but is this the rise of the at-home economy? For instance, I think it was Glovo. They've invested a lot of money in dark stores to get your groceries in half an hour, up to half an hour in your house. So if we think of dark stores, we can think of dark and anything to get anything in your home in a few minutes. Is this the rise of this new at-home economy? Even companies, right? I'm working now with more than one company, okay? It makes no difference. I'm always here in my office, in my house. So I'm like, it is exactly the same. So I can work to Ireland, to Lisbon, to London, to Amsterdam, Paris. I can get a lot more money because I have more time available. So how can the company be different? Meaning, can the company ship something to my flat, to my house, to make it look more the brand I'm working with? Or else it's always the same thing, right? I see no difference. It's just different people.
I'll give you an example. Ooh,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. The wine business, for wine tasting, for example, you could imagine that they disappeared, right? And I'm a wine lover, so I admit here. Some intelligent guys, what they did is they build a brand around it. So they send boxes of wines to people, and then they do a digital event, and everybody tries the same wine at the same time, and they share. So that was a reinvention. And you're right, Hugo. At home will be a new channel that in the past was a little forgotten, and now it becomes more real, I would say.
I think you might see like
Yeah, that's the type of example I was thinking, kind of reinventing a business model that didn't exist before, like the wine tasting at home, but as a community, is a good example.
Yeah.
Food and wine pairings, like companies that do both, and they deliver like the food and the wine to your house, and you do the last mile cooking
Yeah.
at home. But
That's happening. Ollie, you were saying?
I think what you might see is that there's the kind of the at home kind of stuff, but then the people who are, once it lifts, people who are going to want to go for an experience, and again I'll reference retail, the retailers that can actually provide an experience rather than just a transaction, are going to be more kind of destination focused, like the model of the Selfridges. You go because it's not just about going and buying something in Selfridges. It's actually, you can go there and have a coffee and have an experience. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of innovation that forces into, whether it's hospitality or whether it's kind of more retail driven stuff. You know?
Yeah, experiences. You're completely right. But you don't have to wait much, because you see that Airbnb's way of coming out of this crisis with the decrease in income is turning to experiences, selling experiences on location, of course, but they are going in that path already, and many others will have to do that. As you say, going to a restaurant or going shopping will not be just for getting the stuff or eating, or no, it will be for how you will feel to be there. How will you feel to buy that thing with that seller that will convince you something else, and he will make you feel special. People will go after that for sure, surely.
I think what's so interesting is you're saying like the reverse in you were talking about the wine, you know, that Hawksmoor, the steak restaurant. I don't know if many of you know it, but you know, they've been through a lot of obviously challenge with restaurants shutting down, and now for Valentine's Day they're doing like a Hawksmoor meal in a box, and it's the steak and it's all the stuff that comes with it, and it's like 130 quid like for a steak meal for two, but they're sold out for this meal, and so they've almost opened up another channel that they didn't have before, that they probably wouldn't have explored, but they've been forced into this, and now they're selling out, you know, 130 quid steak dinners for two. So yeah, it's interesting when push comes.
And at the other end of the scale, McDonald's started delivering. I mean, I would have never thought of that, but obviously it's a need there as well, and people
with free delivery. Free delivery. Yeah.
But one thought I have about this part is, I think like more from some age, people who are able to rationally make a choice to find this habit that they had to socialize in another way, they do that maybe 1 or 2 times. But also what I see is that a lot of youngsters their brain are less developed for calculating risks, for example. They just hook up. Nobody knows. They keep it under the radar, but I can see it everywhere happening. They are probably also the people who still spreading the COVID exactly in the Netherlands. But they just, they don't say too much. They just hook up together. They go for it, and they are like whatever, and they act on a feeling. So that's maybe just an observation. Rationally, we can maybe temporarily bring this Valentine steak dinner to our house, but I think it's not very sustainable, because it's just not human, you know. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Yeah,
the small changes, you know, we're already preparing food, but now we'll deliver it. We've already got wine, now we'll ship it to you, and we'll have a virtual event. Those kind of small changes are relatively easy. But how do you sustainably do this? How do you do this strategically? And you know, maybe I'm in a weird situation with this, that we're mainly working for mid-sized companies that are dependent upon funding, or we're working for, in one case, the scout team of an established company, and they do all their new business ventures and so forth, validating the ventures, and we do the legwork for them. So, but you know, what we're seeing there is that last year, everybody we worked with was really good at making rapid, quick, tactical changes to how they approach customers, how they interacted between the staff in the office, what tools they used for virtual communication and so forth. Then it got to the end of the year and everyone just sat there and went, annual planning? Can't do it, right? And, you know, we've got 2 clients that we were supposed to kick off projects for, and they're both sitting there going, yeah, that X many $1 million in funding that was supposed to be released just isn't. So you guys are on a hold for the foreseeable future. And, you know, obviously that's paining me, but it seems like a small tactical challenge. And, you know, picturesquely around the corner, there's a couple who used to have a horse box that they rented out to transport people's horses around the local horse shows. Can't do that anymore. So they repurposed the horse box into something else. Well, it's still basically a box they transport around. That was easy for them. But for a company, and for a company that's launching new business ventures or seeking $10 million in finance or whatever, when you get to that point, you're planning a year ahead, not what are we going to do this month. People don't seem to be coping with it, from what I'm seeing, quite as well as they coped with those very quick short-term adjustments to behavior or introduction of small services that extended existing services. But maybe that's just my unrepresentative perspective.
But no, I think you're making a very good point. And I think at the beginning, people were saying, okay, it's on a short term, like it's not going to last a year. Like by August, we'll be back on the office. What small changes can we make to make us last for the next 3 months? And then you get, okay, after 3 months, okay, we need another 3 months maybe to think. But now you're getting at the end of 9 months, and it's like, or nearly a year now, and it's like, okay, we can't just be thinking in bursts of 3 months. We need to start thinking maybe a bit longer term, what changes can we make. And I think that's probably the struggle you're seeing, because all of a sudden it's kind of everybody's eyes that are opening. Is kind of, we just can't just do those incremental or just short term changes. We need to kind of think something that's sustainable in the long term. And there's probably a struggle. I haven't observed that as much as you probably have, Kevin, but there is probably a struggle that people are all taking a step back, say, okay, well, it's not the next 3 months we need to think about, it's the next 3 years maybe, because who knows, like the next round or next strain of the virus, it'll be like lockdown open, or what, like people don't know. So there is probably that kind of thinking, kind of long term. And
in this
and just what I'm talking.
So sorry, Kevin. Sorry, go ahead.
The technology. No, so Ali was mentioning something about experience that kind of triggers something, because we're also talking about workspaces and workplace, and I think that's probably how we see physical workplaces changing, and it's probably going to be more experience based. You go to the workspace or workplace to experience something, either connection, doing a think tank or doing a brainstorming, and then you go back home to do kind of your deep work, and you're like, so I have a feeling that spaces will change a lot, and I'm being told that my internet connection is unstable now, so I shut up.
No, that's actually a very good point. So many companies will become remote friendly, others will become remote first. Okay, but is this good for talent? Meaning, can we, for instance, work with companies abroad more easily? Can we hire talent regardless of where they are? Because that was an issue, and we all work somehow in innovation or technology. We know how hard it is to find talent. Is this an opportunity, or you guys see this as a threat? Because I can hire cheaper people elsewhere in the world. How do you see or an opportunity for those countries to become more developed? How do you see this?
So I've had a couple of people join my team, different teams at the beginning of this year, and I found it, and they found it quite difficult onboarding into an environment where, you know, you don't have the serendipity of kind of just meeting people and bumping into people and being introduced to people. And I think it's a really tough time, actually, if I was joining a new business, to get that kind of, I don't know if I can put my finger on it, but just that thing you get from being in a physical space with new people and interacting with them. So yeah, I think it's challenging. I think whilst you've got reach and you can theoretically reach anyone in the world, and I can get an engineer from Portugal, or, you know, I can have people in, you know, working around the clock if I want to do something, follow the sun. I think which is probably some of the same old problems we always had, but I just think that missing that connection that, you know, that you get in a room with a whiteboard with a team, I found that quite challenging.
So I think we might see that changing, though. I'm talking to a perspective that our organization is being built for remote work. So my team is distributed anyway. We don't have an office as such, but that was the case before COVID. So while I joined in February, and for me it was an adjustment. I mean, I never met my team, but yet we've very good connection. The biggest challenge, and I think that's kind of, it's in the challenge that always existed, is time zones. So you can't say we'll have a team lunch because one is having just after finishing breakfast and the other one is having for a few drinks. It's trying to kind of have a team event makes it a bit harder. But otherwise, I mean, we're looking, like when we advertise a position, we're not, there's no boundaries. Like we try to pick the best candidate for wherever they are, and we have kind of policies on salary. So whether you're from a country where that salary goes a lot further than a country where it doesn't go anywhere, we balance that way. But yeah, remotely, we still finding talent very hard. Whether it's like it's looking into one country or looking across a few countries, finding talent, I think it is hard all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working cross borders and through multiple territories for about 15 or 20 years now. And I guess my thought is that there are geographical areas which will benefit from this, but they're not necessarily where people would expect it to be, because human beings are not a fungible commodity, right? A graduate programmer in Dakar is not equal to a graduate programmer in London. Sorry, but the fact that you've got a similar looking qualification and you claim to have the same job title means nothing. So the hope that this will be a big boon to truly troubled countries lower down the earning spectrum isn't necessarily going to pan out. But where you've got situations where you have highly skilled people with a high level of fluency in internationally recognized languages, English and French, for example, but because of inertia they haven't been able to get the roles, those people are going to help. If I was a native Croatian with fluent English, I'd probably be sitting here thinking, my career options are opening up for me, this is good. But I think there are less or fewer places like that than you might expect. Romania, Croatia, fine, but it doesn't really help you if you're in Bangladesh.
I don't know, because I'm more exposed to it. We work a lot with African countries, and there's been a boom in the last year or two in innovation hubs and kind of technology, kind of small technology offices, and it surprised me. But again, I'm only working with them for the last year, so maybe they were always there and they weren't as visible to me. But there is a big innovation community in Africa, which I didn't, and not necessarily in South Africa you might expect it, but in kind of sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, Congo, the DRC, and we see it kind of happening across those regions in areas that we didn't expect to see innovation hubs popping up. So you go. There's a lot of opportunity in those countries for innovation.
Yeah, Eric, you're right. A lot of innovation is happening. Innovation hubs are happening in Africa, but I tend to agree with Kevin. I don't believe that the patterns of employment will change to those countries with less that are known for having less skilled resources or lesser quality or with difficulties in language. I believe the biggest challenge will be for who hires, because talent will be more spread out. It will not be in the same location. So for you to hire, it will be an extra challenge. For those companies that already do remote and do it well for the past years, that's going to be business as usual. But for the others that were used to receiving the people in their office and seeing them and getting to know them, for them is going to be a big challenge, for those incumbent companies of the past.
And you have to think of employment laws as well across different countries where you're hiring from is a challenge. You have to think about, okay, if the whole world is open, it's whoever has the most money to get the best resources will still get the best resources around wherever they are. So it's there'll still be challenges whether you're hiring like in close to a home office or around the world. You'd still face challenges and you'd still face the same competition. I think people will hire talent wherever they are.
Yeah. And I believe that another thing that this came to accelerate is the freelance, the gig economy, the freelance work. In Southern European countries, we're not used to that. Most people are not used to that. They don't trust that. They want people in their rosters. They want to really hire them. They believe that they will dress the shirt much better, which is completely wrong in my view. For me, that will be a challenge. More freelance work will come. And that's going to be interesting to see how Southern European countries will adapt to that they aren't used to that. What's your point, guys? You guys that have worked in several countries, what do you think? How do you see freelance working evolving?
Is that something cultural to hire not freelancers? Because as far as I'm concerned, my company, there's a lot of reserve regarding hiring freelance people.
I see. Well, it depends strongly as well. For example, I can understand that startups they want people to be in the groove. They want to feel the idea, to be intertwined. That there's a different level of intimacy between the team in the beginning of a startup. But for larger companies, I think freelance is going to gain more traction. You have a projectized company, so you'll hire a project manager for that specific project because he has these specific set of skills for that technology. You don't need to hire him forever. That will tend to gain more traction as remote grows, as this detachment occurs with the help of technology. But that's my view.
Yeah, fully agree. But also, I mean, that's how I was forced to work, like project-wise, because I needed the subject matter experts to drive the projects, the innovation projects. But then again, you see people in my company, they have big, reservation against like people from outside. No matter if they sign an NDA and they say, hey, they can bring our knowledge to the competitor. That's old-fashioned thinking. I'm sorry. If you do this as a freelance, you are dead in a minute. I mean, when this comes out, your reputation is ruined forever. Nobody will do this. So but it's still there. That's old-fashioned thinking, and it takes, I would say, I expect that it takes a long time to overcome this. I don't think that that COVID is helping this or not. This is just, I see it very difficult.
Yeah.
Guys, I like to stick around, but I have to bounce. Sharp at 8, we have a curfew ending at 9, and I have to pick something up, and I don't want to be arrested on the road. So I hope to see you guys next time.
No,
thanks a lot. Thanks.
It's time to wrap up, and I'm really happy because we spent 1 hour already, and you guys are still here. So somehow this Zoom was useful. Okay, just to wrap up, we talked about innovation in particular that regards people culture. I would say, and I think that is the major concern now, not just because of the need to innovate for the organization to become better, because many of us are probably living unprecedented times. We are like a bit insecure because things are evolving at such a pace. A plan today is not valid tomorrow because of all of these black swans, COVID variant 1, variant 2. So I guess that's one key takeaway from here. Another takeaway is that a few innovation leaders are now more empowered. Benedict shared that with us. So there's more visibility for the need to invest in innovation. We know that in the past, innovation was like, oh yeah, it's nice. A lot of innovation theater. We've had here many famous authors and speakers talking about that. Innovation labs, beautiful showrooms, but no value. So it seems that things are evolving, but there's still a lot to do in that matter, because there was also someone here saying, okay, my budget is now 1/3 or 2/3 of what it was, but I still need to do exactly the same thing. Just before we finish, I would like just to share what's going to happen next, meaning next week. So next week we are going to have here Linap's CEO, and he will talk about how to prioritize and test the most critical assumptions. And actually 2 sessions in the same day. Okay, this is too much. No, which means there is excitement about the Innovation Cafe. And Mike Seck from TerraCode will be here sharing his life experience as an entrepreneur, as an innovator. And I'm a big fan already because he is one of the men behind this game here, Red Alert, Command and Conquer Red Alert. But he's now running a company in the US developing IoT platform. So I hope to see all of you. If you cannot join, send friends in. I think there's a lot to learn here. It was a pleasure to see you all.
Have a great night, guys. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Well.
Bye-bye, guys.